Good morning, all. As we enter into this service, please note that those of you participating via Zoom have been muted by our host, and we ask that in-house participants please remain masked while in the sanctuary. Also be advised that this service is being recorded, and with the exception of joys and concerns, will be published online. Finally, if you wish to take a moment to arrange your own chalice at home, please do it now. Our opening words this morning are by John M. Higgins. Welcome to this place. This is a place where no revealed truths are promoted and no scripture or human being accepted as infallible. This is a place for searching for truth, but we are believers. We believe in intellectual freedom. We believe in justice. We believe in compassion and concern for each other and the whole world. We believe in commitment to those ideals which make us caring and active in the struggle for human dignity. Dolores will light the chalice here in the sanctuary. I invite you to light your own chalice and place it where it can be seen by all of us. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lit the flame within us and the community. Thank you, Dolores. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind our remote participants to leave yourselves muted and our in-house participants to remain masked. However, we want you and whoever is with you to sing as big and loud as you like. Make it a joyous experience. Please stand if you are able and sing the opening hymn, Our World is One, number 134. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria. We're glad you have joined us today. Our UUCC sanctuary sits on land which the Salinan and Chumash indigenous peoples historically inhabited. We honor their contribution to this region and give thanks for the opportunity to gather as a faith community on their unceded ancestral lands. As a Unitarian Universalist community, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation run by the democratic process. We invite speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds to speak at our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a variety of topics and areas of interest to our community that connect with the UU7 principles. Today's service centers around the first principle. We affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Reverence and respect for human nature is at the core of the Unitarian Universalist faith. We celebrate the gifts of being human, our intelligence and capacity for observation and reason, our senses and ability to appreciate beauty, our creativity, our feelings and emotions. We cherish our bodies as well as our souls. We can use our gifts to offer love, to work for justice, to heal injury, to create pleasure for ourselves and others. My name is Judy Butler, and I am your worship associate for this morning's service. I'd like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We're glad you joined us this morning, whether here in person or in Zoom land. If you're not on our mailing list, please visit the UUCC website at www.uucambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all our activities. And please check out what's happening, a weekly e-blast sent to all members and friends. This is a great way to keep up with the latest news of this community. And as a reminder, if you wish to see this one or any of the past Zoom services again, recordings of these services can be found on the UUCC website and Facebook as well. The membership committee invites non-members to consider joining our community. Please contact our membership director or a person on the board if you're interested. Thank you. So again, good morning and welcome to everyone. The affirmation is both a recognition of the nature of this community as well as a promise we make and aspire to. If everyone would repeat the affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. We set aside this time for any short announcements that would be of interest to our UU community members and friends. Please keep your items short and to the point. For any items that need more explanation, please call or email the person after the service to be respectful of everyone's time. If you have an announcement, please raise your hand. When Andy or I call your name, please stand or unmute yourself, then speak. Anyone here in the sanctuary? No?
Judy, hi. Andy does. Just a reminder that this coming Thursday, like every Thursday morning, the meditation group will be meeting at 10 a.m. here at the sanctuary. All are welcome to join from 10 till 11 on Thursday morning. Hope to see you then.
Is there anyone else out in Zoom land?
Yeah, I have one announcement.
All right.
Next Sunday is a community building. So I'd like to encourage you all to come and be a part of our community building experience. We'd like to hear from everyone who comes. It'll kind of be like a circle, as we've done before, and we look forward to hearing from you. So stay tuned. It's called Diamond Sunday, and we'd love to have you join us.
All right.
And I think that's it, Judy.
Okay, well, okay, thank you. We're looking forward to next Sunday. Today, being the third Sunday of the month, we welcome a witness to this pulpit. A moment of witness is widely practiced in Christian and Islamic denominations as a means to bear witness or give testimony about the way a specific religious affiliation has impacted one's life. Our hope is in that moment of witness, a congregant here can briefly share a significant experience that moved them, helping all of us to deepen our relationship with Unitarian Universalism and strengthen our ties to the community. This morning, Andy Fagan will share a moment of witness with us.
Thanks, Judy. So the moment of witness process was introduced September of 2020. It's almost 2 years old now, and I did the first moment of witness here at UUCC. Since then, many others have participated, and no one was scheduled for this month, so I decided I'd step in and I'll make sure somebody's ready for next month. My moment of witness is regarding a program that means very much to me called On Being, formerly called Speaking of Faith. The On Being Speaking of Faith organization just celebrated their 20th anniversary. Thousands of people attended a Zoom meeting that was a celebration of that anniversary. I was one of them. In 2002, I was on a search for spiritual direction without much success. In 2008, you may recall there was the famous economic downturn. It was the fall of 2008. My work had mostly evaporated since I managed corporate events and they stopped meeting at that time. It was also the presidential campaign period with President Obama versus John McCain. So it was a hectic and trying time. I was spending a lot of time taking long walks, listening to podcasts, most of them about current events. I went onto the NPR website to see what was available, and over in the corner, I saw something called Speaking of Faith, which I had never heard of. And I figured, okay, I'll try that. I downloaded that podcast and went on my walk. Krista Tippett was interviewing Greg Epstein in an interview that was called Exploring a New Humanism. And I was amazed. They spoke to me with a language that resonated so powerfully. Tears came to my eyes as I was walking. I probably also was shouting out, yes! And I was just so excited to find a place where I could go that really spoke to what mattered to me. I started listening to all the programs on Speaking of Faith that fall. Of course, in November, Barack Obama was elected president. Fast forward to New Year's Day of 2009. There was some friends were having a New Year's Day party, which I attended. A lot of academics were there because Diane, the lady of the house, was taught at CW Post. And I was talking to 4 or 5 people in a group, and I dared to say to them, and I mean that because it was not easy for me, have you ever heard of a program called Speaking of Faith? And they all said, oh yeah, it's really great. Much to my amazement, I went, wow, okay, this was not a religious gathering, but all these people knew that program. And I said, wow, that's amazing. It's meant so much to me. And I said, so now I have that program, but what I lack is a community to share it with. And they said, well, have you tried going to the UU Fellowship of Huntington? And I said, the what? I really had no idea what that was. So that New Year's Day that year was on a Thursday. That Sunday, I took the courage, I mustered up the courage to go to this church and attend a service, the first one of 2009. And immediately I knew I had found a home. As soon as that service began, I knew I had found not just a home, a community and a spiritual home. And I've been a UU ever since. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Sharing together some of our personal and significant joys and concerns brings us closer as a faith community. We invite you to share the milestones that are deeply felt as a part of your personal life, along with expressions of gratitude or acknowledgement. But please be mindful and considerate of all who come to worship with us this morning. This is a time of community building. Thank you. The collected flames of these candles embody all the joys and sorrows which may have gone unspoken today, but are also deeply felt in this community. The first reading, let me find it here. The first reading is an excerpt from Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. And for those of you that have not read that book, I highly recommend it. It is very moving, and it just makes you want to go out into this world and straighten things out. But this is from Just Mercy. My years of struggling against inequality, abusive power, poverty, oppression, and injustice had finally revealed something to me about myself. Being close to suffering, death, executions, and cruel punishments didn't just illuminate the brokenness of others. In a moment of anguish and heartbreak, it also exposed my own brokenness. You can't effectively fight abusive power, poverty, inequality, illness, oppression, or injustice and not be broken by it. We are all broken by something. We have all hurt someone and have been hurt. We all share the condition of brokenness, even if our brokenness is not equivalent. I guess I'd always known, but never fully considered, that being broken is what makes us human. We have all our reasons. Sometimes we're fractured by the choices we make. Sometimes we're shattered by things we would never have chosen. But our brokenness is also the source of our common humanity, the basis for our shared search for comfort, meaning, and healing. Our shared vulnerability and imperfection nurtures and sustains our capacity for compassion. We have a choice. We can embrace our humanness, which means embracing our broken natures and the compassion that remains our best hope for healing. Or we can deny our brokenness, forswear compassion, and as a result, deny our own humanity. So many of us have become afraid and angry. We've become so fearful and vengeful that we've thrown away children, discarded the disabled, and sanctioned the imprisonment of the sick and the weak, not because they're a threat to public safety or beyond rehabilitation, but because we think it makes us tough, less broken. I thought of the victims of violent crime and the survivors of murdered loved ones, and how we've pressured them to recycle their pain and anguish and give it back to the offenders we prosecute. I thought of the many ways we've legalized vengeful and cruel punishments, how we've allowed our victimization to justify the victimization of others. We've submitted to the harsh instinct to crush those among us whose brokenness is most visible. But simply punishing the broken, walking away from them, or hiding them from sight only ensures that they remain broken, and we do too. There is no wholeness outside of our own reciprocal humanity. I frequently had difficult conversations with clients who were struggling and despairing over their situations, over the things they'd done or had been done to them that had led them to painful moments. Whenever things got really bad and they were questioning the value of their lives, I would remind them that each of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done. I told them if someone tells a lie, that person is not just a liar. If you take something that doesn't belong to you, you are not just a thief. Even if you kill someone, you are not just a killer. I told myself that evening when I had been telling what I had been telling my clients for years, I am more than broken. In fact, there is a strength, a power even, in understanding brokenness. because embracing our brokenness creates a need and desire for mercy, and perhaps a corresponding need to show mercy. When you experience mercy, you learn things that are hard to learn otherwise. You see things that you can't otherwise see. You hear things you can't otherwise hear. You begin to recognize the humanity that resides in each of us. Now, let us join in a time of meditation and of silence. Let us seek the quiet and the calm, laying aside our struggles, and in the silence, may there be a reverence in our hearts, a thankfulness within our spirit, and a deepened understanding of the meaning of our lives. Let us enter the stillness. May we find the compassion and empathy we need to strengthen relationships. May we find ways to love each other well. May we not judge or condemn, but rather build a beloved community. Our second reading this morning will be read by Reverend Lunn, who is with us in Alabama. I turn it over to you, Reverend Lunn.
Good morning, and thank you. This is a piece that I wrote in 2012, about a year after my dear friend Troy was killed in Georgia. The state of Colorado, where I was living at the time, was engaged in a fierce struggle as they were trying to move toward execution of inmates there. And it's entitled Confession. Forgive me, Mother, for I have sinned. Last night, I killed my brother, your son, for something he had done when he'd just begun at 21. But now he was about my age, or would be soon. They say he had a quiet way and was often kind. What? No, we never met. Mine was a sin of omission, or is it submission? I must say permission, because the commissioner delivered death on my behalf. The Department of Corrective Killing. I can't deny that I was willing. I knew the time, the place, and manner, even what the men would wear who strapped him in and how much they are paid. I knew. And I did nothing. I said nothing. God help me. I felt nothing. I forgot and watched the evening news while post-racial anchormen in the pressed gray market-tested suit read the same gray market-tested news. He didn't mention what I did, what We did, all of us, even Lester Holt knew, and he played along. Accessories, all. Accessories after, during, and before the fact. The fact, call it what it is, the murder, a premeditated homicide of an unarmed man. He was guilty though, right? I will consider that. When you show me one among us who is not. Last night, dear God, I killed your son I never knew and never will. Next week, in Huntsville, it is the people's will that once again we kill. And now I forget why I came here. See, I can't repent the crime while I prepare to do it one more time or two or hundreds, just until we find a better way. An asteroid where we can have them stay, or some drug that will make them be okay. But now, today, we go on in our participation and collaboration. If this is the lesser of two evils, then what in hell could be more so? Death for death, grief for grief, loss for loss, the deadly violence of our collective minds.
Please stand if you're able, and we will sing Circle Round for Freedom, number 155. Again, let's do it with gusto.
Twice through.
Thank you, Rebecca. Today's sermon is titled, He Called Me Brother, Lessons from Death Row, to be delivered by the Reverend Lynn Hopkins. The Reverend Lynn Hopkins is a Unitarian Universalist minister serving the UU Fellowship of Montgomery, Alabama. Lynn is a lifelong activist for justice and equity since the days of the Vietnam War. Raised in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., Lynn and Lynn's spouse, Carolyn, lived for 20 years in the Atlanta area and then in Denver, Colorado, briefly before settling in Montgomery in 2014. In all of those places, Lynn was engaged in public advocacy, protest, testimony, and other activities in areas of sexuality and gender equity, racial equity, poverty and homelessness, criminal justice, disability access, and more. Currently, Lynn serves as co-chair of Interfaith Montgomery, on the board of Montgomery Pride United, and the Leadership Council of Faith in Action, Alabama, and is a member of TRUST, Transgender religious, professional UUs together. Lynn identifies as queer and is gender non-binary and prefers the use of Lynn's first name in place of pronoun. I give you the Reverend Lynn.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Andy and Rebecca, for your music and your gracious, generous selection of music so that I didn't have that task as well. I really appreciate the invitation to be here. I'm sorry that Randy is not here today. I understand he's traveling. But Randy noticed the tagline on my email when he contacted me about something else and was intrigued. My email under my name and address says, I have a brother on death row, and so do you. So I want to start with a story. In 1989, a summer night in Savannah, young people out at the local pool hall, and Larry, the local homeless guy, had managed to get his hands on a six-pack Red. A neighborhood tough guy, well known to police and locals, decided he was going to take that beer from Larry. A couple of recent high school graduates, Dee Dee and Troy, saw the disturbance and went to confront Red. Leave Larry alone. As the two of them approached, Red pistol whipped Larry, and police officer working security at the Burger King next door heard the disturbance and comes running. Suddenly, shots ring out. Officer Mark McPhail is hit once in the chest and then again in the head after he goes down. Dee Dee and Troy take off running. In the morning, Red appears at the police station with his attorney and says he saw Troy murder Officer McPhail. Arrest and conviction happened quickly. No physical evidence, no gun, blood, DNA, gunshot residue. The only physical description available didn't fit Troy in any respect. But police managed to find a few folks who were already on probation, who could be coerced or threatened into representing themselves as eyewitnesses. The recantation of the eyewitness testimony began before the trial was over, but the jury had no idea of the many problems with every one of the prosecution witnesses. Ultimately, they all recanted except Red. Now, as you may know, all of the rights and protections afforded to citizens evaporate at the moment of conviction. There is no presumption of innocence or even benefit of the doubt. That guarantee to competent counsel is gone. Most states provide some post-conviction representation, but it's not required. Many states severely limit it. Georgia, at that time, provided no representation at all. And of course, there's this common misconception that the appeal process gives people a chance to show that the court got it wrong. But once a person is convicted, all the presumption goes to guilt. Testimony given at trial under oath is regarded as more trustworthy than anything given post-trial, even if it's supported by physical evidence. It requires an extraordinary circumstance of specific, documented, provable, deliberate or grossly negligent error to even gain access to the appeals process. And the court is under no obligation to take seriously the claims that are made after conviction. There is a clear and widely acknowledged preference in post-conviction process for finality over fairness. Our Supreme Court has actually made clear that innocence, factual innocence, is not a legal guarantee against being executed. Troy Anthony Davis was actually innocent. He was killed by the state of Georgia on September 21st, 2011, over the objections of dignitaries and statesmen around the world, Jimmy Carter, Desmond Tutu, Pope Benedict, even arch conservatives like Bob Barr and William Sessions. People firmly in support of the death penalty spoke out when they saw how indefensible process was in this case. Most of us are sure that wrongful conviction occurs in a tiny fraction of cases and can be corrected when it does occur. But the course of Troy's process made painfully clear how unlikely it is that wrongful conviction will ever be overturned, and how unimaginably difficult it is to establish legal exoneration. But even as difficult as it is, since 1973, 186 people under death sentence have been exonerated. That's 1 for every 8 people we have executed since then. 1 for every 8. You can imagine if a new drug caused irreparable harm in 1 case for every 8. The failure rate of the system is unconscionable, and most of our failures are never uncovered. The vast majority of wrongfully convicted persons never get access to that invisible key that could unlock justice, and that's not by mistake. Our system is designed that way. Finality over fairness. Once a felony conviction is reached, an individual is in a separate category, legally separate from citizenship and effectively separate from humanity. It's always been so in this country, and that's a problem for me. It's a problem for me because as a Unitarian Universalist like you, I'm in covenant with UUs all over the world that we will affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Inherent, meaning it can't be separated or stripped away. It can't be spent or discarded. Every person, every single person, not people, not even all people, but each individual. The necessity of social order, the protection of society, of preventing and responding to crime, especially violent crime, those things are real. But just as real is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. The ones we call criminals, as if criminal was a category or a species distinct from human. And I'm convinced that no one actually wants to execute innocent people, even the ones who adamantly pursue those executions. And we trick ourselves into believing in the integrity of the justice system because it's unimaginable that it could be that flawed. But here's the thing. As I got to know Troy through visits and letters and phone conversations, and through getting to know his family, it opened up a different way for me of seeing the whole situation. My spouse and I made contact with Troy when we learned about his case because we were convinced of his innocence. But as we got to know Troy and experience his heart and his spirit, it was no longer about innocence. He helped us to see the inherent worth and dignity of all the guys there without regard to guilt or innocence. Today, when I meet a person under death sentence, I don't care whether he or she actually did the crime. I don't need to know the story that brought them to the place, unless they want me to. And it doesn't matter if I can believe their account or not. Inherent worth and dignity. Now, I don't mean to suggest that I've attained the capacity for unconditional love of every person. I'm still fully human, subject to the revulsion and rage that rises when we hear some of these stories. I couldn't sit down with Dylan Roof after he killed the worshipers in Charlotte, or Peyton Gendron, who killed the grocery shoppers in Buffalo. I have limits, but they are subject to change, and I work on them every day. Once I was in an event with Sister Helen Prejean, of Dead Man Walking fame. Someone asked her, how do you do this work without getting attached? I knew her answer before she spoke it. You don't. If you can do this work without feeling a connection with the people you're visiting, then it serves no purpose. Of course, you connect. Connection is the point. See, connection is how we recognize and honor the humanity, the inherent worth and dignity of other human beings. My personal theology is a relational theology. God is what happens when human beings connect and break the illusion of our separateness. I know y'all have talked about restorative justice, the powerful process that can bring healing and reconciliation to the lives of people shattered by violent crime, both victims and perpetrators. Obviously, it's the ideal response, but requires voluntary participation of everyone involved, which means it's unworkable in many, if not most cases. But what we are doing doesn't work. Caging and dehumanizing people, most of whom will return to society after some years, only serves to increase the problems we face. We've long established the failure of mass incarceration as a deterrent to crime. I'm not a social scientist. I don't have the prescription, but rooted in my religious convictions as a Unitarian Universalist, I'm clear about a few things. Incarceration is almost never the best possible response. I know that every one of us is capable of acts that could be subject to the most severe punishment. And none of us is defined by the worst thing we've ever done. I also know that no system we could ever design would be perfect enough to be a rational basis for taking life. I know, and I've seen up close how capital punishment has never served as a deterrent to crimes it covers, and ultimately dehumanizes everyone involved, from corrections officers and medical personnel to prosecutors and police to the surviving family of crime victims. And one more thing I know, not only from my belief or process of reason, but through my lived experience, the end result of execution always is not closure or justice, but only more suffering. Execution gives us only another grieving family. I took the title today from an article written by Reverend Randy Loney, Troy's longtime pastor. He was talking about a visit to an inmate on Georgia's death row shortly after Troy's execution. And he says, he told me he had once needed paper and a pencil to write letters home. He mentioned his need to Troy, and soon the man found a pad of paper and a pencil on his belt. Another prisoner explained how Troy greeted him warmly the day he arrived on death row, and how over time Troy's friendship helped him face living in death's shadow. Another prisoner explained to me, Troy taught me how to be a man. He didn't blow up in adversity. I asked this same man when we joked about prisoners' nicknames, what did Troy call you? And the man paused, overcome by emotion, and answered, he called me his brother. This man, a guy from the Deep South, and Troy Davis, a Black man from Savannah, were brothers. Troy knew it, and he wasn't afraid to say it. I could talk to you for hours about the details of this case and all the things that went wrong, or about the dozen or so similar cases I'm watching right now in various states determined to take lives as quickly as possible. But my time is up. So let me conclude by saying that I know death row work isn't for everyone. It requires an enormous reservoir of faith, resilience, compassion, forgiveness, and determination. It's often too much for me. But everyone who is committed, as I am, to affirming and promoting the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and to affirming and promoting justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, has a role to play in this struggle. We can stand vigil every time a state takes a life, even if it's not our state. We can study and learn the facts and share them with anyone likewise committed to affirming humanity. We can write letters to governors, boards of pardon and parole, district attorneys. We can send money or volunteer support to organizations working to end execution and those working to represent the targets of execution. I know you have a lot on your plate and a lot on your hearts these days, but you are not without power to change the world. And I promise you that together we can do just that. May it be so.
Thank you, Reverend Lynn. And I echo, may it be so. The morning offering will now be given and received. Please remember, we are a self-sustaining congregation and provide all financial resources for our many ministries. We recognize the spiritual value of generosity and invite you to participate. If you are viewing this service remotely, please use one of the methods shown on the screen. Thank you. Our thanks for all gifts given and received for the work of this community. Let us now sing the doxology, the Spirit of Life. please stand, if you are able, and sing the closing hymn, Break Not the Circle. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Just a note, Rebecca has done a wonderful job this morning for filling in for Jan. Let us now recite the valediction. We have basked in the warmth and beauty of this flame and this community. As the chalice flame is extinguished, let us carry its glow within. Let us kindle new sparks within these walls and beyond. And please extinguish your chalice at home now. After the benediction, we encourage you to stay for questions and comments. Andy or I will call on you when you raise your hand. Reverend Lynn will now deliver the benediction.
Happy Father's Day to all of you who have been fathers, who have had fathers, who have benefited from the love that the people who act as our fathers in our lives bring us. And happy Juneteenth. Let this important day of liberation remind us of two things. First, the work of liberation is unfinished. But second, Juneteenth reminds us that even when liberation is so long delayed, breakthroughs remain possible so long as we remain committed to the inherent worth and dignity of every one of our brothers and sisters on this earth. Amen.